This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, that's a good idea. I can check.
All right, we will call the order of Monterey Select Board on October 31st at 6:01 PM. We have all three members present here in Town Hall. I know that we have some community centers business, but it is for 6:30. And I saw the new director, and he said he would be down at 6:30, so I think we'll hold off until then. If that works for everyone.
Sure.
Because I think there's at least him and maybe Lori are planning on coming at 6:30, so I don't want to get ahead of them.
Yeah, that's fine.
So the first item of business is the Human Resources Director position. So we have 4 proposals
Yes,
in front of us.
Did you guys get a chance to read through them at all?
and I skimmed through, I wouldn't say I read them all.
Yeah, I did too. Did you have any first?
Well, I think, okay, like the Deborah Radway, was, I don't know if she'd be a long-term solution, if we wanted some.
The independent.
Yeah, the independent. So she put in there, I didn't bring. She says, I am interested in temporary project.
Right,
So this is, we're looking for someone that we can consult long term.
which is in a way ironic, because I felt like of the ones we got, that I only briefly got a chance to look at the later one, the UMass one. But of them, I mean, Organization Inc. is weird.
So they've never done municipal, as I understand it. Well, don't quote me on that. They haven't done a lot of municipal. And I don't think they've done a whole town. It sounds like they might have done some portion of the town.
The difficulty I was having with them was more than that. Like, the way they approached the application, and then I was like, there's no real solid information about the people or work they've done about it, so I went to their website, and their website's like it lists the people's name for their team, nothing's clickable, there's no information about any of those people. There's no information about anyone they've ever worked with or what they actually do. The only thing you can get is a list of jobs they'll do for you.
I don't think that they're a front runner at this point. I think of the ones that we've received, having not read them thoroughly, I think the UMass one stands out because they are in Massachusetts, do work in Massachusetts, and the person who's proposed as the project manager has previously been the interim HR director for Braintree.
The other one,
which is a larger town, and, actually having been an interim human resources director in a town in Massachusetts. Actually, I don't know if Braintree is a town or city.
It's pretty close to the city, I
Yeah.
imagine.
So that, on that alone, without getting too thorough, without having interviewed people, I feel like that's a good.
Do you have concerns about the price point?
Right. Well, there was a Rachel Glisper.
So the HR temps?
Yeah, she was Needham, she was the human resource manager for there.
So of the two that Gov. I preferred Rachel over the.
Yeah, I did too. The other one, Rachel had, if you look, I spent time with Google search on her, because she has municipality experience.
Yeah.
Now Rachel is part of the HR, GovHR, she's not part of UMass.
Right, yeah, yes, that's right. So there, I think what we get out of it, someone had recommended Organization Inc., to me, but if they don't have the municipality, I think we're better with, pay them to want it.
would it be, just based on these initial discussions, would it be safe to say we could interview next week as the contingent on availability?
Well, trick or treat hit the streets tonight for a good time. Others are taking.
Mary Flanders McCarty from UMass, and then Rachel Glisper from
HR, yeah.
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that too.
So I'm just gonna raise an ugly specter, which is at 160 an hour for the UMass folks. What can we actually afford?
I don't know,
I mean,
Yeah.
it might be that we can afford the number of what is it a month that we would have allocated? Do we have a?
do we know what we were paying,
I think there'll be about 14,000 left after we pay our couple months share to Barrington.
Right, so, and that would cover, now we probably wouldn't be hiring till December, right? So we'd be talking about December, so 6-7 months.
Mhm.
14,000 is $2,000 a month. At 160 an hour, that's fewer, that's only like, what, 10, 11 hours a month? Now, that might be all we need.
Yeah, I think one thing that we're going to have to do is probably, the job is going to be significantly different from when we had a shared human resources director. We can have that discussion. I don't know that it makes sense to go, I think we had about $18,000 this year for the whole year.
No,
And
23.
was it about?
After we transferred everything, and I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, my sense is that whether we go with, barring us getting another proposal that we also would rather, but let's say we're shooting for maybe Rachel Glisper from GovHR at 91 an hour, or maybe UMass, which offers 160 for the HR practice leader, 125 for senior associate, and 60 for management analyst. We're probably not looking at like 6 hours a week or 8 hours a week. But I do think that it's important, even if it's only on an on-call basis, because we have set up certain procedures for things like maybe a sexual harassment complaint, where I think it's really important that we do have an HR director and maybe, one of these people. So even if it's on an on-call basis and there are no regular hours, but that is definitely a discussion
We can have after, talk to them, see their availability.
I guess I just wanted us, because I don't disagree with anything you said, Justin. What I was hoping is that it would get us thinking about what our real kernel of need is, and that maybe it is just on call. I mean, I think a lot of the revamping of policies or handbooks, I think that's come to completion. So what's the kernel of the job? If it's not handling like payroll issues, which I don't think it is, right? Then we should have in our heads what that kernel is, so we can be clearer with the people we're interviewing to make sure that the skills that they're offering is tailored to what we need, but also so that we're clear about for ourselves on, how many hours that might take, even if it's average over a period of time, and obviously if there's an investigation. But I
Yeah,
just wanted us thinking about that.
I think that's a good one. I think, I think we are all kind of in agreement, and say if you're not, obviously, but that we want an HR director for something like a sexual harassment complaint.
Right.
That gets forwarded right to them, we pay them on an on-call basis probably. And then the question is, working within our budget, if we wanna keep the budget in a similar amount, how much can we use them additionally for things like recruitment or reviewing job descriptions? And it would partially depend on who we choose, because the UMass Boston rate for for the HR practice leader is 160, and the rate for the consultant for Gov HR that has experience in Massachusetts is 91. So that's almost double, not quite.
And also might depend on, like, as we're thinking about what we want, if we're thinking about what we think the most likely things are that we would need them for, that might be a key one, right? Like, because we want the person's skill set to match what our need is, but I think we need to have a clear view of what our need actually is. Yeah, that's all.
Do we think we have a 9 AM meeting next week? Do we have any appointments or anything?
Just accepting the bids.
We do,
Musical interlude.
Oh, well, it did happen.
Very nice.
assuming
That works, that works good.
assuming availability, could we shoot to do one at 9 and one at 9:30, maybe? Even though that's,
I'm gonna ask, I'm gonna say we should meet at 9 to talk about what we think that kernel is.
Yeah.
And we should do 9:30 and 10,
okay, that works for me.
because then when we go into the interviews, we'll have a clearer idea of what we're expecting.
And I guess too, you can indicate to Gov HR and Gov Temps that we are hoping to interview Rachel Lisper. And then the other thing is if any other proposals trickle in or something of that nature, we go back and read them. I have to say, I've glanced at them. Then maybe we'll add a 10:30. But I think it's a good sign that we're looking at people who have served as an HR director of a Massachusetts municipality or city. I'm
It
not
definitely
sure.
seems like it helps. I don't know how much having people that are used to doing union contracts is gonna help, but, I know, it's not gonna hurt, but it's not a problem.
No, it's not.
Okay, so we'll do 9:30 and 10. Next week, interviews of those two. Unless anything changes, we may add additional. The next item of business is town administrator evaluation. So I think we're still shooting for next Wednesday, November 8th, for board members to have completed reviews.
And we need to put on our question for next week is if we want participating in that evaluation to be part of the person's duty. Or if we're thinking we're gonna keep it internal.
Yeah.
Back up a second, you're talking about having someone summarize it, or? Okay.
Yeah,
Option 2, I think, is, to put it on the table, I think ultimately we need to be able to see something about what the other people are, because we're making a pretty big decision based on that. And I think if we're doing that, we need to have, we need to go within OML, but have a way to legitimately have clarity on what everyone's concerns are.
yeah, I think as opposed to last year, we will discuss the composite review at a select board meeting.
But we have to get a composite review
Yes.
somehow.
Yeah.
And the question is, who puts it together, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand.
Or do we go with don't have a composite review and have a conversation, whether it's an open session or an executive session, where we have a conversation about the 3 individual ones? But we
Yeah.
have that conversation with each other as well as with Melissa.
I don't think that's a bad idea.
I don't think so, somewhere we just, you gotta have a discussion, and keep dancing around it.
But is that in
I mean, I
favor
think
of
that,
that?
to be fair to her, we do it in an executive session or how, we just, I mean, there's 2 issues, there's the current job description going forward with, in my opinion, a different job description. So I think there needs to be the open discussion how we're gonna do it.
But I think Susan raises an interesting point. Maybe it's not even worth making a big deal of the composite review. Because it's, at the end of the day, it's 3 individual reviews and you can only compile them so much. But I think part of it is we can maybe even ask next week, UMass, GovHR, you know, what they think, you know, what their experience is.
Okay. When do we wanna do that? I'm away 5 days, so my schedule is extremely tight.
Are you back on Tuesday?
I'm back Monday night, so Tuesday, my recommendation would not do it next Tuesday morning.
What, next Tuesday? The
Next Tuesday.
interviews?
Well, do the interviews, yeah, but do the, you know.
I think we'd have to wait till, like, if we're gonna do a series of interviews where we conceivably are asking for that person's potential
Yeah,
input on this, where it's not a conversation that would happen that day.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen that day, I think, I agree with you there. But we need to, you know, what's the time frame? You know, we talked about it having next week, I gotta be away for 5 days, so it makes my schedule tight.
Are you talking about having individual select board evaluations completed? You feel like
Well,
November
okay,
is too early?
if we complete them, what do we do with them? I mean,
Okay,
I mean, I can't share it with you, we don't have a human resource manager, so.
I see what you're saying.
Do we plan a different session, to have the discussion, I don't know, you know? It has to be, you know, you have to have a regular meeting and then you go into executive session.
Well, the other thing, so we're talking November 8th is a Wednesday. I assume we're meeting the next Tuesday, the 14th, the next Tuesday, the 21st.
Yeah.
Wait, it's the 7th, not the 8th, right?
The 7th is.
We're meeting the 7th.
Yeah, 7th,
But I
right.
think we had kind of set it,
The date of the.
a date of trying to have.
So-
Right.
He's falling apart.
So the question is, yeah, when do we put it out?
See, if we had them at the 8th and maybe had individual meetings at the end of that week and the beginning of the next, maybe we'd have a discussion on the 21st.
Yeah, we could, I mean, my schedule's open after that, if you wanna.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, that's fine.
Just so I'm clear, so we'll have them by the 8th and then you'll each meet with me between the 8th and the 21st.
Yeah.
And then the 21st, well,
Mine's not gonna be ready the 8th if I'm gonna do it, I like to do it and then sit on it, so I'll get it by the end of next week. We still can meet and discuss it
The following week, yeah.
the following week.
Okay. I guess we'll also gauge next week during interviews, and something to think about whether or not we want an HR director involved in the individual meetings or at any point in the process. But for now, I guess kind of, we're talking really 5 to 10 meetings the week of the 13th to the 17th, individual meetings between board members and Melissa. And Tuesday, the 21st, kind of a board discussion. Okay. The next item is.
Before we, I'm trying to get clarity on, we have the sheet where we fill out, but do you write up something else? And, I mean, what has been your experience? It's sort of like a checkoff, there's not a lot of room to.
Well, I think Susan and I have only done it once.
Okay.
But I think generally it's been pointed out that it's really not fair to give ratings without
Well,
kind
that's what I'm saying, so you
without
would have
kind
a document, say, this was question one, this is how I arrived at this,
Well, I think
something like that.
as much as possible, and it's in kind of the instructions of the new evaluation, like there should be supporting evidence. It
Okay,
shouldn't
right,
just be, you know,
I'm
8,
not, I agree.
5, 4, how did you get there?
Right.
So,
I dealt with it by leaving it in the Word document and actually where it says like notes or comments, writing
Mhm.
whatever I thought
Alright.
needed to be said, and that it might, I think I did things I thought would be helpful to develop or later at the
Mhm.
bottom, there's a section for that,
Mhm.
but there I put if there were particular incidents or things that
Okay,
happened or
all right.
examples.
You're bringing clarity to it. I just wanted to make sure.
I don't think there's a case where kind of like real examples, like this went really well, could hurt.
No, that's.
Like that's all the more
You know,
real, the better.
I was told you can't give an example, you can't evaluate.
I mean, but you need to be able to say what the example is,
Well,
and you
I
just wasn't
get
sure
it.
where to put it.
I think
so.
it was more like when if a comment was made, like, you didn't do this, and like something that proves that, you know, on such and such a date or whatever, you did X, Y, and Z. If you were gonna make like an insinuation or something, that something,
Right, it's common sense evaluation, it's just not about numbers and few comments. The comments are like what you said, giving you a sense of how we arrived at a number. You know, if you do this well, you know, because you did X, Y, and Z, that's how I arrived at the number. I mean, that's, you know, I don't have a problem with that at all.
I think I was more concerned about the actual written parts from last year, that there were some comments made that didn't, the comments made that you didn't actually, the select board member didn't actually witness or something,
We get those.
so having actual verifiable,
Right.
Not based on hearsay.
right, not based
right,
on hearsay,
yeah.
or something that happened 20 years ago.
Are you, like, we had talked about the self-evaluation part,
Yeah, I'm working on.
you're working on it. Cause I think it might be ideal for us to have yours, so that when we have the conversation, like that thing we did today, when we're, like, it gives us a basis for.
When you said like today, the Harvard thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay,
which was
not-
interesting.
it was interesting. Like, I don't
We
know
were
what evidence it gives.
No, it doesn't, but I think-
it leads to some interesting discussion.
Yeah, we had
about
some
how
good
approach that.
discussions about, you know, how we interpreted the.
No, I mean, that's all good, I printed it
And
out, I
Susan
just
get
haven't.
rated data all the way towards data,
Yeah.
By
Yeah,
right?
I think I was one shy, cause I can never go to the, I never go to never.
One of them, she went the other way on herself, but I had her way on.
I know. Yes, I was. Not shy.
I know.
I'm curious, where did you fall on that one, Jessica?
Okay.
I forget.
We haven't met yet.
No, but I was just curious what he rated himself as.
It's kind of down the middle.
Yeah, I think I mostly was down the middle in my self-evaluation, so
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
I
not
got it.
straight down the middle, but close to it.
Close.
Okay, so, look, we're shooting for, we set November 8th, latest November 10th. Individual evaluations, meetings the week of the 13th to the 17th with Melissa. And November the 21st, a board discussion, involvement of a potential HR director to be determined, depending on how things go.
And thank you for reiterating at the end, clarifying the schedule, that's helpful.
Yeah.
That's all what they're on.
Bally Gally lease, is this is the same as last year?
Yeah, so just need to know if you guys wanna keep the rent the same or increase it.
Hey, you increased it last year?
No.
No.
We did not.
And
I think it's
I think we should increase it at least $50 a month, I mean, that's not a huge increase,
We
and
did, Jim did some work for the building,
He's trying to schedule some work, we haven't had,
didn't
done a contractor yet.
he?
I went on Zillow, I don't know if that's the best indicator, because you know, I'm like totally an advocate of trying to keep some of housing that is not outrageous in Monterey, but the least expensive, 3-bedroom, do I remember correctly?
I think this is a 2-bedroom.
2-bedroom, so there's a 2-bedroom in Lee, like this is what was on the housing market available for rent. 2-bedroom in Lee for $1,800 a month. A 3-bedroom in Lee for $2,000 a month, $1,995. 3-bedroom West Boxbridge, $2,500. 4-bedroom in Lee for $2,900. So basically, they just go up from here.
So what you're saying is they're getting a deal.
I'm saying that, yeah, I mean, it's not an insane deal, it's not free, but it's a good deal. And when was the last time the rent was raised at all?
I know there was talk about it.
I do,
It was 1,000 and,
I think this is why we have inflation though. Everyone's like, well, everything's going up, so we'll raise our thing too. Which I understand, but we've put some money into the building, but we don't pay real estate tax.
Huh, that's true.
Um,
Are we paying utilities on that
No,
building?
I hope not.
we paid for the, water, which was like $420 a year or something like
$420 or $4.20?
that. $420.
Well, let them have it for, they pay the water. That's their interest.
That's a big increase.
Oh, we pay the water, yeah, they pay the water.
Oh, actually,
Well,
it's less than what if $50 a month would be, right,
600.
600 and 420 is.
One less check we give them.
Well, is it the same check as the water for this building?
I'm sure it's two different accounts.
2 different accounts, but yes, I'm check. Yeah, it was 1,050, I can't find a year, I think it was 2 years ago. And then prior to that, it was 1,000. So you've only gone up in small increments.
I would keep it the same. I feel like it came up at the special town meeting about the school merger. We need to focus on affordable housing. We can't just say no one's living here, we give up. Like, why aren't people living here?
I agree.
You're the minority, you're the young one. I don't know. I think they've been good tenants, haven't they? You know what you got.
Then I'm good with it.
I'm not good with that.
Why don't
You
we,
bring up a good point though.
what's that?
That's affordable housing.
Well, I have a
Also-
much more lengthy, time-intensive, effort-involved proposal to potentially provide some affordable housing in town, and so I feel like.
Oh, you can't. It's not on the agenda
But-
tonight.
but-
It is,
No,
it is.
It's under
It's hidden.
my.
But I think your point.
Oh, Monterey.
I think your point that
Oh,
just
God.
because everything's inflation doesn't mean we have to do it if it's not increasing our costs and we're covering the maintenance of the building.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a good point.
it's a good point.
So I was
Two,
happy to
when
be
you
shut
have
down.
good tenant,
Yeah.
believe me, I've done rentals. A good tenant, you want. Hey, Laura.
Alright, I would move to approve the Bally Gally lease renewal for $1,100 a month.
Okay, I second the
Second,
motion.
yeah.
Any other discussion? We'll call a vote,
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
and yes, that's unanimous approval. We're gonna switch around orders a little bit just because it is 6:30 PM and we've reached the community center discussion with Dennis Lynch, Mark Andrews, Lori Shaw, and the new community center director. Thank you
Thank you for coming.
for joining us. So, do we have any updates from last week? I think I saw a meeting I saw Jim's truck at the community center when I was driving by.
A few meetings and updates. At our last meeting, we basically discussed the idea of a capital improvement grant. And as a result of a subsequent discussion with a state representative in the program, the Cultural Facilities Fund, about our eligibility and our competitiveness in the grant for capital. It was indicated that although we'd be eligible, there are certain things that we could improve to make our grant application more competitive. And the representative mentioned there was another option available. Basically, it's called the Feasibility and Technical Assistance Grant, which enables a community to step back and to develop their thinking, their plan, and reach out for additional public input, notify various organizations within the municipality, and have a discussion with those organizations, such as the Monterey Community Center Committee, the Friends of Wilson McLaughlin House, both of which are very much involved with the planning of the pavilion. And it was suggested, although it's a decision made by the select board, that Monterey would be very competitive going for a less expensive so-called feasibility and technical assistance grant. Now, compared to the capital grant, of which you could receive up to $200,000, this particular one for feasibility and technical assistance is a maximum of $35,000. So essentially, because it's a one-to-one match, so if it's a max of 35, we would have to put in 35. If it was 20,000, they would match it with 20,000. But the bottom line is, so it's less of an expense to the town compared to a local match, which we had most of, I believe, based on our last discussion. And also, we would be much more competitive than the capital funding.
But it's not for the same thing. A feasibility grant's usually to pay a contractor to come up with plans or to pay an engineering firm. So
Yes,
the previous plan was to actually do the build.
That's
This would
correct.
just be to think about doing a build.
right. It's
Just wanna make sure I'm clear, because that's not
Yes.
what the ARPA monies were designated for.
right. This is in fact similar to what you described. It would be preparation of architectural and engineering plans, for example, looking at a needs assessment. It could be several elements of a feasibility and technical assistance plan. But it would be focused on specifically the community center, the pavilion, and any other associated activities or improvements to the operation.
To that piece of property,
For that, yes.
okay.
And it would also give us an opportunity, since the master plan is pretty much on its way, the open space and recreation plan would be a perfect place to enter the community center property as a future capital project under that plan as well. And once the town completes that open space and recreation plan, they are now available to receive grant funds under that particular program. So that will be additional funding coming back to the town as a result of course, they would have to apply for it. So there's benefits to going this way as opposed to the other.
So, quick question, Dennis.
Yes.
If we put, let's say we put 35,000 of ARPA funds towards this, and then we get a 35,000 match, with 70,000, what are we expecting to get in return? Like final plans, ready to put out to bid, or?
Pretty much. At least 60% plans, I would think. So essentially, going through that process would enable the town then to turn around and go back in for the capital program.
Apply for the other grant.
Yes.
Right,
like the lease.
so you're just adding a planning stage to it. This is, it's a feasibility, do the study, fine tune the numbers.
Right.
and then you go and ask for the capital, and that, you crossed your Ts and dotted your Is before.
Exactly.
And I'm completely supportive of this concept, I just need to throw out a couple of reality checks. When do we have to spend the ARPA monies by?
26.
2026? Okay, so, good, there's some time there.
Sure.
For some reason, I thought it was 2025, so I was like,
We had
Whoa.
one committed by 2024, and then you had 2 more years.
to actually do it. And is it December 2024 or July 2024?
December 31st.
Okay, cool.
So one other,
Thank you for knowing. And the second piece
Sure.
of that is just remember, whatever the monies are that we allocated to ARPA, that's the pool that there is. So whichever piece we use to apply to this comes out of that chunk. It's not like it refills. It's sadly not that wonderful goblet that comes back up at the top when you sip out of it.
Yeah, but I think if we were taking the old, say the first suggestion, and you had capital investment to do, you're gonna have to do these drawings to
Yeah,
get
any which
permits.
way.
that's right.
He may have done a lot of them, but you gotta get them stamped off, you gotta get them
That's right.
approved. So it's like you're just trading the cost now versus later,
That's right.
you know?
And if we did go in and we weren't successful, let's say,
Mhm.
we will have spent some money getting a no answer and then have to come back through the feasibility route,
Right,
and you're essentially doubling the amount of money you would have spent if you'd gone through the feasibility route to
I see
begin
what
with.
you're
And
saying.
wasting that much time as well.
Exactly.
So,
And there's also, there's also the possibility that if the grant is awarded next May, which is usually their timeline for awards.
This is the feasibility.
The feasibility study, correct. I think they would actually award both categories of grants. There's a third category, which is replacement of existing
Mhm.
equipment for efficiencies, but that's something down the road, which would also apply here. If it's awarded in May, and they have a fall announcement for additional funding, another round essentially, there's a possibility of completing that feasibility study in time to come back in the fall for the capital program.
So your time schedule is now is to get the feasibility grant by May, right?
Yes.
And then we'd have to have someone do the work. Do you think that work could be done by maybe fall?
I don't know, well, I think probably, yeah.
Maybe if you already had someone lined up
Yeah,
contingent.
they have somebody.
The other thing is credit to Mark, he's got a lot of the,
Yeah, got a lot
you
of.
know, I mean, they gotta cross their T's and dot their I's, but
Sure.
when you have, I've seen his documents, they're good documents. Someone can go in and start, they're not, it's not a scratch.
Right.
You know,
Right, and we're thinking maybe
Into-
Steve McAllister, who did the work on the community center
okay,
before, might be the person. to
right,
do
so I mean, it's all good news, I mean.
2 questions.
Sure.
It sounds like 35,000 is the maximum amount that can be awarded.
Correct.
What's the reason behind going for the whole 35? Is it that we feel like 70 is what we need to do the study? Or is it just because 35 is the max?
I think over, if the board gave the green light to proceed with this option, we'd make an effort to reach out very quickly and get a number. I couldn't tell you right now what that number is, whether it's 15,000 or 35,000, but we know the max is 35,000. Would you agree?
Yeah.
It just, for
So,
me,
and well, are you locked into taking all 35 if it's awarded?
You can receive up to 35,
But it's based on what you think it will cost to have the work done.
the work done,
By
correct?
that time, so you go for the 35 and then you work the same avenue of getting someone to give you a formal proposal to do the work.
I think what I heard Dennis suggesting was that while they're writing the application, they would also do inquiry to get a better ballpark estimate on what the plans would actually cost, so that
Yes,
because of course, the level of competition changes with the level of the request. And if we don't need the full 35, which would mean we'd be also drawing 35 down from the ARPA funds, and we could do it with, I'm gonna make this up completely, 20, so it was 10 and 10, that would be a significant difference in savings and allow us, we'd be a smaller grant, so we might have a easier time getting it, and then we also have a larger pool for the actual bill.
Sure.
So that was the impression I had, that you would actually be thinking about what that number was and getting some data on that before you apply.
Sure. But just to give it, but that can only happen if the green light is given to
Yeah.
approach.
I think I'm hearing that you're gonna get the green light, Bill.
But you might wanna, we talked about the possible growth of the plans, I think they might be thinking it's only for a pavilion.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, if you wanna get into all that.
70,000 seems high for getting plans for pavilion.
Yeah, but you're adding a
Right.
bathroom, it seems
Yeah,
high,
like
but,
bathroom. I
yeah,
mean, we've been batting around sort of a long range thing, and I don't know how long range that is.
So what's on the plan besides the pavilion and the bathroom?
So, we, something that's come up over and over again with people in the community center is that it's not big enough and there's no storage. So I took a look at, the square footage and the 15 occupants per square foot requirement and our 49 person occupancy. And the actual occupied space could be expanded about 8 feet out the back and still come within 49, the 49
For the septic.
for the well, no, it's,
septic's dictated by bathrooms, isn't it?
yeah, it's the number of people per square feet.
Yeah.
So, and it was kind of arbitrarily set at 49. 49 is the max you can go before you have to change the use of the building from B use to a use, which is assembly. And once you hit assembly use, then you need sprinklers, which is a no-go. So, but we could push that back wall out 8 feet for 2 bays of the truss, and then the third bay over behind the stair could be a storage room, about a 7 by 9 storage room, 7 by 8, I guess, and still be, and still be 49 occupants. And I actually ran this by Don Torrico this afternoon, and he had no problem with it. He said,
And what's kind of like, do we have the usage to support that? Cause I'm guessing that's a pretty big price tag for that kind of build. I mean, I could be totally off, I don't know, but.
Yeah, but.
well, that's kind of where the feasibility study comes in.
Right.
That's where the feasibility, but if you're not adding plumbing,
Right,
if it's storage, you don't have to worry about air or heat as much and stuff like that,
Right.
so. If you're not adding another bathroom,
right, it's not
Yeah,
a huge
it
amount of
is.
square footage.
you're not adding a kitchen,
Right.
your cost per square foot would be
Much
down
lower.
much lower.
Right.
But I think what Dennis said, your feasibility will tell you.
Exactly.
you
It's
know.
an
Yeah,
option.
because actually another wrinkle came up this afternoon with the, Bilco door and our discussions with Jim Hunt, and he really would like, to keep access to the basement, which I
And
understand.
that's totally makes sense.
Right, so we, would either move it to the other side, or this afternoon, we were over there looking at, maybe the bathroom moves around, coming off of the kitchen bathroom area. But that's gonna be contingent on where the septic system is, and we don't know where that is, and we're hoping that there's documents in the town here somewhere.
The septic system?
Yeah, where the tank is.
I
We
don't
know where
think
the
it's very
field is,
old.
we know roughly where the tank is, but
Yeah.
we need to know the required setback, which I think is 10 feet, and we need to know where it actually is, so.
So these are the kinds of things that would be part of a feasibility study.
Okay, yeah, and I don't wanna get ahead of ourselves.
Right.
But it sounds like we have 5 kind of long-term projects at the community center property. The pavilion, a bathroom, parking, outdoor lighting, and an 8-foot addition off of the back of the center.
And let me, if I may add
Yeah.
to that, we would have that discussion also with the community center committee.
Yeah.
As a group, as well as the Friends of Wilson McLaughlin, both of which are very intimately so and I know Lori is here in support of that idea.
I think Justin, on the addition out the back, I know from my experience in building buildings, we always looked at this future's here, you do the dotted line, because then you identify things when you go through, you take it to Don inspection. I know there's not a setback here because you're far enough, but they identified now. I think that because you're doing the feasibility,
Good timing.
you just throw it in there. It doesn't cost that much more to do.
And you take it out later. when
You take it out later, but you find out,
Potentially.
they think, look at like, okay, your electrical load, do you have no, can you put plugs in there, things of the little things that the infrastructure, you identify it now, then you're not going down the road and saying, oh, 3 years I gotta do this. Well, no, you can't do that, So it wouldn't be that much because it's pretty much an open space.
And the state is saying, based on what you just said, the state is saying that once you get to that point and develop those numbers, you're getting as close to shovel ready as possible. Meaning you're ready to go. You've got plans, you're ready to go.
Right.
And that's what they want
And
to
that's
see.
what they want for the other grant.
That's right.
Yeah, and two is I think they're smart at doing it because it allows them, you have completed plans, and then when you go to do it, you run the risk of less surprises. And more cost. Well, I can't finish it because I didn't think of this.
Is parking on that list that you named?
Yeah, he
It
mentioned
is.
parking.
Okay.
But that is a follow-up question I had. Did you have any discussions with Jim about parking, or is the idea to leave that on hold until the feasibility study?
We focused on the access to the basement primarily, I believe.
Yeah.
We didn't have any direct discussions regarding parking.
Well, there was a meeting though a while back, right, with the planning board about parking.
Oh, yeah.
There were two
But that
meetings
was.
about parking.
Yeah.
And I can't say specifically, but my recollection is that we could use the lower field for larger events and have that marked off, and then add some other spaces up on the top, level that out a little bit, and put some more spaces up
So
there.
they did want more spaces at the top.
Yeah, I believe so. Now, don't quote me on this, because I wasn't at the meeting.
Oh.
So I don't know for sure, but it seemed like we wouldn't need as many up at the top because we could use the lower meadow for overflow. For the rare occasions, maybe once a year, that we would need that amount of parking.
And that would be looked at in the feasibility study.
Well, I have to say, I'm all in favor of the feasibility study. It makes it seem a lot more manageable. And I think it's a good thing, so
But I have a question, who manages it? We're gonna do a feasibility, who becomes the point of contact with the company that's doing it? Is that- Everybody wants it until they have to manage. I mean, it takes time, someone's gotta,
Was
I mean,
that
you
you
don't have to,
volunteering,
we don't
Mark,
have
or
to
saying
answer
it wasn't you?
the question now, but, we gotta make sure, there's gotta be the one person, and I'm not volunteering, Jim, I just don't know, but, when you go to spend that kind of money,
Right.
you gotta have someone,
Project manager.
you gotta have like an internal person here, the guy calls up and says, I can't get hold of Don, how do you do it, or something like that.
Yep.
I got a question for him, someone's gotta be here to do it. I don't know who that person is, but it's gotta be.
It's not Lori. But there needs to be, the point is, there needs to be a person that's willing to step into that role and commit to it.
was this in part of your interview process when you were being interviewed and hired?
That's why I took the job. I wanna be that person.
But think about it, I mean, it's, we have to.
When is the deadline for the grant?
December 14th.
So I guess we have two motions, one that we want to vote on, giving Dennis the hours to go ahead and write a grant.
Mm-hmm. Is that a motion? I'd second it.
Okay, I make a motion to give Dennis the hours needed to write the grant for the feasibility study.
Yep,
Second, yep.
Second, aye.
Yeah, is there any further discussion? We'll call a vote.
Yes.
Frank, and yes, so that's unanimous approval on that. And what was the second motion? Oh, you need
Yeah,
this?
that's the only one.
What was the second one?
I don't know. You made the motion, and I was like, what's the other one?
I need some sugar, let me go outside.
What did I
The second grant.
What, the motion for the writing the grant for the, oh,
The library?
the library
I
grant?
can explain that.
Well, that, if
That's
we're,
a different topic,
we have to
right?
settle the community center stuff.
All right, let's settle, yes, I agree.
So my only remaining comments on the community center side is, Jim has been very hopeful in his tenure as director of operations in dealing with things like the lighting at the community center and getting temporary lighting and getting other lighting. And I guess maybe it's worth having a discussion with him about parking to see if he can help with that, cause I know they've done a good job with the curbing here and the ball field and so many other things in the past couple of years across town. And
That's on last year.
Yeah.
Last 6 months, playground and then.
yeah, and the demo of the playground and getting that site prepared, so maybe it's worth having a discussion to see if he could put on his list for next season, of handling the parking. Maybe you wanna wait till you have the feasibility study done, but maybe knocking out the parking, if he feels like he has a plan and knows what to do,
I'd get his opinion on it.
yeah, get his opinion on it at the very least.
That's free.
And that time spent has value to a grant, perhaps as a local match, we could ask the state if whatever time and equipment and manpower is devoted to that, that should be considered.
As an in-kind
That's
match,
right.
yeah,
Oh, good.
potentially,
Yeah.
Yes.
We have to
sometimes
ask
it's
the question
cash
to confirm
only,
that.
yeah.
Good thought, though.
Well, no, but what was it, MVP, or the 319 grant? We basically matched nothing because of Jim and Melissa's work and the money we put into the milfoil mitigation. So our match would have been over 100,000 or close, and we didn't pay anything because of in-kind, stuff was already done. So, that's a good point, Dennis.
Good plan.
Alright, so does that wrap up community centers, business for now?
I believe as far as.
Thank you.
Unless you know what the second motion is.
I do have-
Expired.
When you touched your nose, was that not me
That's a
or?
not- yeah, that's a not me.
Damn, I was hoping you were volunteering.
You don't know that?
I was thinking, thinking about his middle finger.
I thought it was Halloween.
Alright, so the next item of business is the library grant.
But we will forgive you guys for leaving.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
I'm RJ, nice to meet
RJ.
everyone.
Nice to see you guys. You both there.
So
Yeah, let's stay on this in the library grant.
the digital equity planning grant through MBI.
Wednesday?
What?
Thank you. Do you have anything to present, Dennis or Mickey?
I could, if it's okay with you,
Yes,
Mickey, I
please.
could give some background on this particular grant application. So this is called a municipal digital equity planning grant or program, which is essentially what the application would be. And it's funding from the American Rescue Plan Act through the states, in this particular case through MBI, Massachusetts Broadband Institute, to communities within the Commonwealth to advance the idea of helping folks, people who during the pandemic and were affected by the pandemic in terms of their abilities to access the internet. And certain populations are mentioned such as veterans, such as folks with disabilities, and just folks of an aging group, a certain age.
Why are you looking at me?
I'll tell you, I had the opportunity, because when I hit that group, to look up the census tract. And the average of the median age in the town of Monterey is 64.9 years.
Yeah, I go ahead and run it right up to 65.
Yeah. 65. So
Is a
that's
median
just-
age.
Yeah. So, and
But the
other
mean
groups-
age isn't far off of that, which is
Yeah.
alarming in and of itself.
And other groups as well, folks who need additional income or additional help to be able to enable them to access the internet. So the whole idea would be, this project would be through the library, and it would enable the library to improve their hotspot as well as their computers, so that training could take place for any of the groups that I mentioned, perhaps others.
So the grant is for the tech improvements, not the staff hours to train people? I just,
Yeah.
either which would be okay, I'm just trying to clarify what the
Yeah.
concept is.
So the way it would work is the state would give certain approved contractors, which in this particular case, the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission happens to be one of those approved organizations, to conduct a charrette. Now, a charrette is just a term that basically means you have a public forum, similar to the way the master plan was conducted, where questions and answers are provided and information to the public. And through that learning process, a plan comes to fruition. And it's that kind of planning effort that would take 1 to 3 months. There's a second or longer effort, which could go up to 6 months or even longer. But the thought is to go for the so-called charrette on the first time around, and then if the town so chooses, they can go for a more expansive plan, equity plan, secondarily, after the first portion is completed. I know, for example, town of New Marlboro has in fact taken that route. They've gone with the 1 to 3 month charrette to get feedback from the public, and that's all arranged directly. The funds go to the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission if the select board chooses, and they conduct the whole project.
My only, it all sounds good, Dennis. My only other question was, I have been getting emails from MBI for the past couple of years. And I've been in touch with Michael Baldino probably over a year ago.
Remind me what MBI stands for?
Massachusetts Broadband.
Okay,
MBI.
initiative, right, yeah.
Initiative.
Yep.
Don't quote me on that, I kinda,
But
that's a
I-
guess.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Because at various times during the past few years, we've tossed around the idea of getting to 100% fiber connect in town. We're very close. I think at the last estimate, we needed about $250,000. When we first got the ARPA funds, I remember Steve was on the board and we got an estimate from Adam Cheat to get fiber to the remaining houses. And basically, if we took all the ARPA money and just did that, it would have eaten up all the ARPA money. But I think Michael Baldino said that there was potentially gonna be money available in the next couple of years to get 100% or do get closer to 100% wiring throughout the town.
Okay.
And I didn't know if that was an opportunity through this grant as well, through the digital equity program. But that's something, I guess, to look into in the future. I don't wanna take away from what you are
Yeah.
proposing.
I would think it would move you closer to whatever additional funding comes out
Yeah,
to get Monterey to 100% or close to 100%.
yeah.
We are close to,
Yeah.
it's that last.
What are we,
few
98%
percentage
or something like that?
I don't know the percentage, but I know when we signed the Fiber Connect contract, I think it was 9 houses. One is over in the middle of Otis and Tyringham, and it got wired by whoever did Otis, I believe.
It was better than
Yeah,
90%,
they're
it
doing
was 90
Spectrum, I
something.
think.
Oh, yeah, it's close to
I
98.
think they're doing.
Yeah, I-
Who, Todd?
Oh, Otis.
The house that's pretty much an Otis. Then there's a house that's almost in Tyringham. I don't know what they're doing. But then the 2 roads that have multiple houses are River Road and Corshire Road.
New Marlboro,
New,
right close to the
Yeah,
boundary.
right.
New Mal,
there.
yeah, New Marlboro's 100% though.
Right.
So anyways, I don't wanna detract from what you are offering, but maybe in your discussions with MBI, we can, if you don't mind asking them, and maybe we could reach out to them too.
Sure.
Where is that at?
I just wanted to mention that, of course, the Board of Trustees, the Monterey Library, represented by Chair Mickey Jervis, also provided a letter of support for this grant application.
I'm gonna go ahead and put on the table, I move that we approve this application for grant funding for the digital buy project.
I second the motion.
Alright, great. Is there any other discussion? We'll vote on the motion,
Yes.
and yes, so that's a unanimous approval of the,
And I just wanna say, Dennis, I wanna thank you for all of the work you're doing on behalf of the town. Like, I know we keep seeing each other at all the different opportunities that you're involved in, but, you know, you keep coming back and doing more, and it's amazing.
Well, you know, a lot of it is, it comes out of a group effort. For example, the community center committee. So it's not just, one person doing this.
I know.
It's a bunch of people.
I know, but it's still, I know what's involved in doing that kind of stuff, and it's a big commitment of time and thought and energy and meetings and everything else, and like, thank you. Thank you for that,
thank you, Dennis.
Always having fun.
and thank you for
Second that.
putting up with all my annoying questions, and always being completely cool on things.
Well, questions can make people better.
I wish
and
everybody felt
appreciate
that way, since I have so many of them.
But thank you.
Alright,
All
thank
right,
you.
thank you, Dennis.
Thank you,
Thanks
Dennis.
again, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis, don't forget your jacket.
He'd remember the minute he stepped outside.
Yes.
It won't be the last time we did that.
Okay. Alright, I just wanna briefly discuss the financial reserve policy. We don't need to act on it tonight, but I'm hoping that we could get something to the finance committee that could guide us as in our dealings with free cash and general stabilization.
So
Can
I,
you give me a little background? Okay, because this was drafted in 19.
Kind
except
of,
we looked at it again last year.
we did.
I thought,
We almost came to a conclusion, but it never got finalized somehow.
Finance committee and select board did a lot of work a little bit less than a year ago in January or so of 2022. And then I dropped the ball or something like that, something similar, something of that nature.
wow.
But I do wanna get it across the finish line, because I think it would be helpful.
So I think you did it great. What you sent
Well-
plus the additions
Well, so-
jives well with what I
But
remember
when you
from last
take a
year.
look at this and say you approve it, you're talking about the town should aim to be free cash equaling 100,000 to 150, 2 to 3% of the annual operating budget. Yeah.
So let me go over a few things.
Well,
One is we have a choice between percent and number figures. I think percent, I wanna say was something that I took from Great Barrington's policy or another town. I think it was Barrington. The only reason I opted for numbers was because I feel like it would actually stick out when finance committee, select board, et cetera,
You'll remember that.
are reading the policy and say, oh, we have 1.1 million in stabilization, we're not supposed to have that much. There's good reason to not have that much.
Well, yeah,
but I
but
think-
you just don't wanna go to spend it just to get it down either.
Right. But I
Yes,
think
well,
the
yes
reason
and
to
no,
have the
but-
percentages is because these policies don't get constantly revised.
Mhm.
And if it does, like, we're being really good about revising everything, but I guess 2019 isn't that long ago. But I'm
4 years ago.
just point out that, like, the inflation and the increase in the budget, if nothing else because of the school budget, is a real thing. If you don't put wording in about the percentages, at some point, that the intent of the numbers becomes less and less clear.
Mhm.
And I think at some point they become outdated, but if you have the percentage in there, it makes it a lot easier to have the discussion about updating that number. And maybe even about changing the percentage, but at least it's on the table what we were thinking of when we chose those numbers.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways, percent makes sense, it grows
But I
with the
see why you
budget.
have the numbers.
I put the numbers in because it was like, and we should, but who's gonna calculate 7% times 4,892,000,
You round it up.
right? So then, as far as free cash goes, we've been generally, the past few years, in the neighborhood of 250,000, 350,000, maybe a little bit on the higher end. I did add a sentence in there about, obviously, if we sell a truck for $50,000 and that goes not straight to free cash, but more or less
It ends up in.
ends up in free cash essentially, then we'll know, okay, we certified 400,000. But we know why, and it's not a big deal.
And I just
However-
wanted to say, I thought it was really good that you put that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if we're consistently certifying 50,000, maybe something's a little off. If we're consistently certifying 600,000, maybe something's a little off. I know some of it, to a large degree, is out of our control. I have to say 100 to 150,000 leaving in after town meeting is higher than we've been doing. I think we've been in the
20 to 40.
20 to 40,000 range.
I wanted to clarify that with you, because that's a lot of money to leave there.
It
Yeah.
is,
And I'm thinking that,
but those are just numbers to start. I'm definitely open to negotiating them.
and I think that's a really good place to have a conversation too, because it seemed like, and I think rightfully, last year, that's the only cycle I can speak to from personal experience. We were doing our very best to try to use the money that we had to keep the levy from going up towards a lot of the big capital expenditures, and it doesn't look like the need for capital expenditures is going to be less in the next couple of years. So, talk to me about those seem like lovely numbers, but.
It's a proposal. You know, the numbers themselves are not really what I'm after as much as setting some guidelines. That way we go.
But I just wanted to hear you think,
Yeah.
because you usually have thought about it.
Yeah, that way we go into, I found myself in the past 2 years during budget, sometimes we set kind of arbitrary goals and then the clock's ticking down, we're about to sign the warrant, and we say, oh, we could use that last 30,000 in free cash and do X, Y, or Z, which isn't necessarily bad, maybe it could be more 50 to 100,000. But I think the idea is leaving some in there for two reasons. One is, let's say a need arises between the first Saturday in May, or whenever we sign the warrant, which is a week or two in advance of that, and the end of the fiscal year. We still have free cash. It goes away on June 30th, so one thing would be, we have free cash for that. Now, we also have stabilization for a time like that, and we can also just put it right against the tax rate, as I understand it, in a time like that. But free cash would be another source. And then the other thing is, it goes into the following year. There's a good argument, I mean, a lot of people make the argument, the government should hang on to as little money as possible, because it basically could be in the taxpayer's pocket. They could be doing good things with it, investing it, and why does the government have any extra money? But, I mean, I think that's easy to say in good
So I
times.
think that's easy to say that you sit here and have to decide what you're gonna do. I mean, that's an easy statement. I
But-
mean, I don't think you don't.
Well, I think,
Oh, yeah, it's like anything else in life, things happen and, you
Yeah,
know.
you need a little buffer.
we've been in a good situation, but, let's say, really, we have a storm, the state doesn't cover it, we need to fix a bridge. Okay, now we have, or something of that nature. You have stabilization set aside for the absolute emergencies.
I'm gonna say, why don't we, I like the idea, maybe 50 to 100 and bring it down to 1 to, what is that, 1 to 2?
I think because of our capital needs, we need to bring it down so we don't finance stuff if we don't have to.
Yeah, okay, then we can go 50 to 100, I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
Something.
Better to pay cash if you don't have to carry it.
Because I mean,
Yeah.
last week I was spending $5,200 on the interest on the truck. 52.46.
Mhm.
That's a lot of interest.
Yeah.
So I mean, if we have, you need some free cash. You
Um,
definitely do. I'm not.
Well, it also guarantees you, that doesn't guarantee you, but I think there's a pretty direct relationship between money you leave in free cash and it ending, the amount of money that ends up in certified free cash the following year. So we'll go 50 to 100 there, that's fine, it tracks more with what we've been doing, and that's good. Stabilization, I have to say, since I've been on the board, we haven't done much in the way of spending stabilization or saving to it, other than transferring a few articles.
That
We
one
just
you said.
basically haven't touched it. That's one way to approach it, is not really touch it, and it's just the rainy day fund, and we finance our vehicles. But I think if we were really on top of our stuff, we would know what's a low year, what's a high year, and we would, when otherwise we were going to not be, we were gonna have a low tax rate, we would actually artificially raise the tax rate a little bit and put money in stabilization. And then in a year where it would go up further, we would take out of stabilization and we would smooth out.
So
The
it's
tax
more
rate year over
consistent
year.
year over year.
Yeah,
It's adjusted.
I heard of one town out east, and I'm not proposing that we do this, but they actually raised their tax rate by by a certain amount every year, I think it's like 2%, 3%, and they just match their budget according to that. But it's a very consistent,
I don't know if I'm.
growth.
I'm not.
I'm not in favor, but anyways,
No.
That's like dartboard budget.
Yeah.
it's all a little bit beyond me, but it would be nice, I think, to have
Just roll
some,
and hope the number hits.
I think it would be nice to have some,
I mean.
what do they call it when you're bowling? Or like bumpers, bumpers, to keep the bowling ball in the lane.
Right, well, I agree with you, I don't, I mean, last year we had to put a lot of money into raises. And it was, in my opinion, it was the right thing to do. But if you say if I'm gonna stick in the bowl, this narrow thing, the departments aren't large, they lose 25% of their workforce and it's an impact.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's a pretty good idea. Can I raise one weird thing that may not be important, but, so I tried to look up at the top, it's authority.
Yeah.
I tried to look up chapter 69 of the Acts of 2002. Chapter 69 of the Acts of 2002 for the Massachusetts legislature is actually not for Monterey, it's for Winchester.
Do you know what?
I couldn't find it. I could not find it at anywhere at all. Not only was it, there's I stopped reading at 360 for the Acts of 2002 without finding us. There was no way to search just for that word. You had to search on the whole of Mass Ledge. And when I typed in Monterey, the only 2 hits had nothing to do with this. So I don't know what that actually should be.
That's a good point.
But I'm pretty sure that it's not 69 of the Act of 2002.
Would it have been, when, so you know what, this policy goes back to when we had more than one stabilization fund.
Oh.
Would we have had to have done something to create those stabilization funds? I don't know. The highway and.
But I can tell you, we wouldn't be in Winchester no matter what, if we're in a stabilization fund. So I know it's not chapter 69 of the Act of 2002. I don't know where it actually is though. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't honestly, review that, so that's a good catch.
It's annoying and stupid, but it really irritates.
So, but I guess one final thing that I'd like to kind of get squared away at this meeting, well, we don't need to answer it, we'll think about it going forward, is percents, numbers, both.
I actually like both. I think the number helps people stay focused on where that is, but the percentage it shows clearly what our thinking was when we chose it, so that when it gets revisited by another board, I mean, it could be us, but it might not be, to like recalibrate those numbers, they at least have right there, no one has to go look up, well, what was the budget in 2023 or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna keep both, could you put like maybe 600, the number, or up to 12%, whichever is, whatever you want, greater?
What I was gonna say is roughly.
Or
Approximately.
Approximately.
Rob is like framing.
After
it
your
out.
board, people may not update this,
Yeah.
and I think.
But that way it gives a clear picture of
Right.
where we were coming from, as well as a target number that's easy to remember for people. It doesn't involve pulling out your calculator, what was last year's budget?
Cause by the way, I didn't even do the math, I just went on we had it at percent. Then I just said, let's say we have a $5 million budget, which I don't know.
It was 5.4 or something, right?
Was it?
It's over 5 million.
So.
Was it 5,040,000 or 5,400,000?
It's
I looked it
closer to 40 than 40.
Yeah, so
It's not
rounding to
5.4,
5 million is
was it?
pretty decent.
So by the time we have a $6 million budget, which could be in a few years, once we start paying next year.
Based on what I'm hearing.
Each of those 50,000 increments will be a $60,000 increment. So anyways, maybe I'll run this by everyone next week. We're discussing potentially a joint select board and finance committee meeting.
5,060,000.
We are discussing potentially a joint finance and select on the 14th at 6.
Is it worth forwarding them this
I was
to
about to
show
say,
them
that's
where we are, just pull
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
They have a meeting tomorrow night.
Yeah, why don't I will make the minor changes and then just forward it on to them, and then they can take a look at it. And then we can go from there, but.
So just putting approximately before all of the
Yeah,
percentages, that's cool.
okay.
Well, can you put it before the number?
Yeah, before the numbers.
Right, so like.
I think the number is
On the front
approximate.
page, it would say 250 to 350, approximately 250 to 350, or 5 to 7.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that works.
It's really just bumpers. You don't really wanna hit them, but it's just general guidelines.
But it helps, it sort of gives you a target, like bumpers is a good way to put it, but. And it helps set it essentially.
Okay, so we have, a rabbit hole.
So I wanted to give you the estimated numbers that I got for moving it. What I said that last time, approximately 80,000 for putting a foundation over on the community center property. Approximately 100,000 to move it. It does not include the National Grid wires. I spoke to National Grid. If they only have to like raise them or lower them, there's no cost. But if they have to take out a pole and move it, then there is, and I actually have to submit a project request, so she couldn't give me any kind of numbers for that.
But also, sorry to interrupt, but we also have Verizon and Pirate Connect, would they have to be involved?
Possibly.
Yeah, cause their wires are low, their wires are low.
Yeah,
And
sorry.
we don't even
Wires.
have a we don't have a number
But-
for the wire.
We don't, but when I was talking with Justin on Thursday last week, we kind of tossed around some ideas and came up with, if we're gonna spend this kind of money, maybe we should make this affordable housing.
Ah, that's where that came from.
So, but,
But,
We're gonna make
but,
some calls to construct and everything to see if there's ways that they can help us out.
where it is now, we're moving it.
Where it is.
where it is now.
I like the idea of the constructor, but.
Yes, because we don't wanna get into being a landlord,
I
right?
don't.
Or an
wanna-
affordable housing authority. or
But-
anything like
I
that.
know, you don't wanna go down that road.
But there's something else going on here, which is that
Surprise a week.
I think we have somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 in CDBG funds, of which about 2/3 are unrestricted. So we can use them for whatever we want, and I don't want to say we have to do it for this because it's affordable housing and these monies came from housing.
What is CBDG?
The community development block grant monies.
Okay.
So,
You get credit for something, right?
Every time someone sells before the
Right.
timeframe that they had on their loan, the money comes back to the
Right.
town.
yeah, so, and we've gotten 3 payments, and we may still get more. Only one of them is restricted in the neighborhood of 36,000.
Mhm.
So that money needs to be spent something along the lines of, there's a few categories, but affordable housing would be one.
Mhm.
My thinking was just, look, this is money that we have, we don't really deserve, we didn't front the money.
Do anything with it,
We just
It's
ended
a
up
good
with it,
use.
and 36,000 of it is restricted. And maybe the schoolhouse is something that really should have been dealt with, and it hasn't been dealt with. And maybe that money would move us in the right direction. Especially, and some of it's restricted and maybe it would handle the schoolhouse, affordable housing, and the CDBG money. It's just a thought, but like Melissa said, she's gonna reach out to construct.
See what kind of assistance
Yeah.
they can offer us and
Nice
stuff.
job, you
And I did
guys. That
talk
was a
to
good collaboration.
Jim, because we were just talking about parking, you know, the issue, he does agree with you that he thinks we probably could make one parking spot along the retaining wall there.
But there's that garage next to the piece of property, right?
So the way that I understand it is that the retaining wall is not very tall when you're up on the east end of the property. It gets taller as you go up towards the driveway.
Oh, really?
So I don't know what Jim was thinking, but my guess was, instead of blasting out the whole thing and putting in a car elevator or something, is maybe you could get away with where it's on the east end of the property where the retaining wall is not as tall, doing a driveway,
Yeah, right.
maybe. Also, I don't know where the septic is on the property,
Or it is our septic.
I don't know.
I think that's the bigger
But
question.
the
Not much
idea,
of one.
Yeah,
the idea would
it's older than me.
the idea would hopefully to be involved construct, and it's just a thought.
No,
I
I
like
think
it.
I like the idea, I think
Yeah.
it's, I've got a
It's a good
question,
thing to
did we
explore.
ever do any more, we had ARPA funds for looking
Yeah,
at
he's
the,
working on it.
Yeah.
Are the
Plans
historic
I got right
preservation
now, I was
people
not-
gonna, no?
Too impressed with,
you weren't.
My
then we going to call me back.
My thought too is, in the town of Monterey, with the budget that we have, and we put a lot into keeping what we have kind of good, really good. Will we ever get to a point where we reach a critical mass of affordable housing funds or find, to really build like a complex? Or are we better off, having Bally Gally, maybe doing something at the schoolhouse, that kind of fits into the village more?
Right. I agree
I don't
with you, I agree.
It's just a thought. I also don't know if the schoolhouse is ideal because it has those huge windows. It needs a lot of work. The $100,000 is not gonna get us move-in ready. But
Come see my.
But there are a lot of grants for
Right.
Yeah.
And then
Construct
over
may
in
have
Marlboro, they
suggestions
bought
for
that
sources of
Casella's
funding.
Farm.
and-
Casella's Farm, was that part of Construct?
They were involved, I don't know what ended up happening, because I remember at one point,
Did
they
they buy
were
it or
moving
did
along
the
in
town buy
the
it?
backtrack.
Yeah, but they auctioned that piece of property off and it went cheap, it was in the $600,000.
I don't think the town bought it, but I
I
think,
think they
I
gave
think
some
the
ARPA.
town set aside a lot of their ARPA funds towards affordable housing. Anyway, and so then the other point is, look, if we try affordable housing, we look at numbers for moving it, and we look at numbers for renovating it where it is, and then we decide we wanna sell it, then let's do it. Let's do something,
Let's do something.
but,
But at least we'll have done due diligence
Yeah.
and explored different options.
And I did ask about what's the, price that we think we could get for the property. I talked to a realtor and I got a $60,000 figure.
How?
I mean, that's where the bidding could start, or
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah, but it's, the guy next door would be the guy who should buy it
Yeah.
for himself, so he has a bigger
How
yard.
big is the lot? It's approximately.
0.3 acres.
Some days.
Less than
I
half
have
an acre.
0.3 acres.
I know, right?
Is 0.29 acres.
That's pretty good memory there, I gotta say.
It's probably an estimated acreage, anyway.
Pardon?
It's probably an estimated acreage.
Whatever, it gave me a ballpark, that's all I was looking for.
So yeah, that's the school. I don't know if Construct bites, I feel like that's a really good option and people want it. We have this chunk of money from CDBG. Yeah,
Be a productive way to use it.
yeah, potentially.
Cool, I like it. So I have one unanticipated business
Yeah.
day. Okay, so I spent some time talking to Jeff Zimmerman this week, and one of the things he raised, and I thought it was a really good point, was a sort of difficulty with onboarding, he called it onboarding new board and committee members. So we just spent all this time making the handbook, which I think is really helpful. But thinking about just, maybe we should ask Frank, I know it was like for me becoming a new board member. And I know, and then Frank's having an experience, you had it longer ago. But I'm wondering if what the town could be doing, or what maybe it's worth asking each board or committee to think about, what would have helped them become more effective members of their board or committee sooner, and to think about what they should be doing as a group to help onboard new members, because many of them have, all the elected ones, there's new members every year. Sometimes it's the same person, so it's not effectively a new member. But for the finance committee and the select board, those are both things that, and I've only started thinking about this for the last couple of days. I tried to think about what would I say should be in there for a select board member, and I was like,
Yeah. I do think the documentation is generally there with things like the MMA Selectmen's Handbook. Now, who reads that thing cover to cover when you first get on the select board and you're trying it with other stuff? No one. I think what Monterey's really missing, and I don't know of a way to really replace it without having it, is just board members on the select board, the finance committee, and others, but especially those two, who have a long experience on those boards. You find that in other towns, you found it in Monterey's history, where just at a point in time where we've had kind of a revolving door. I think I'm the longest serving member of the select board and the finance committee, right, at this point, and I haven't even served a whole term. And I took over a term from someone who served 1 3-year term. You took over from someone who had served a split 2 3-year terms, but split. In recent history, we've only had a few people who even went and served 2 terms. I mean, in the past decade, there's only a small handful of people who have served 2 terms, let alone 3, 4, 5. And I honestly think when stuff like onboarding and stuff like that is discussed, I just feel like it's hard to replace that in any way.
It is, no
And
argument.
that's just what we're missing, in my opinion.
Yeah, but then we can't, the thing is, there's nothing we could do about that directly, except hope it changes, but, I see what you're saying about the documentation in terms of like the MMA handbook for us, or the
Finance
committee handbook for them. But there's another part that's more Monterey specific, that the person can hold in their head, but that doesn't necessarily help a new member until a topic comes up and they can say, so, Joe, what happened with this last time, or what's your experience with this? Then you can draw that out in that moment, which is great. I'm not downplaying the desirability of that in any way. I'm just trying to get at, like, the Concom goes through a bunch of training, and I don't think it was hard with the ZBA when I came on board there. I mean, it's long enough ago now, but because the zoning rules aren't very long, and the ones that apply to any given case aren't usually very many. And so it's not that hard to get involved in that quasi-judicial situation when the rules that apply are relatively few in number. But the number of topics and the weight of the topics, and in the case of the finance committee, the difference between how finances are run municipally and how they're run both, for ordinary people and for businesses, are so significant. They trip a lot of people up, and the cycle, the timing cycle that it runs on, so many things are different than people are used to. And we handle so many different topics. And maybe it's insurmountable. I just think it's worth thinking about, whether boards could take that on. Obviously, the finance committee is not gonna take that on during budget season.
What season isn't budget season?
True.
August.
But yeah, but like after town meeting, in June and July, in May, June and July.
Yeah.
After town meeting, that might be a good time to reflect on what did we just go through, and now we have a brand new person that just got elected, maybe hopefully that won't be the case, that it's a new person this year, but it could be. Now that you've been through a little bit of time, people, what would have been helpful for you to come up to speed faster and more effectively? And what could we give the next new person as a packet? It's just something to think about. I don't think it's a pressing topic.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about what I could tell the next select board member, and I'm not sure. But I think it's worth thinking about, because I do wonder, I think about the conversations I had when I was running, and John Silbert actually said to me when I asked him to sign my petition to be on the ballot, the first time, he said that I really didn't know what I was getting into or anything about it, and that I should spend time going to meetings, which resulted in me actually going to meetings for a year, right? But I don't think most people do that. And even so, I still felt like there was a big difference between sitting in the chair and watching from from the audience. So, I don't know.
I agree with the concern, and I honestly think the only way to really fix it is to have people serve more than one term and give some kind of continuity and consistency.
That would be great, but it's not something we can do.
Yeah, well, no, it is something you can do.
Well, it's something you can do.
It is something.
You gotta start the trend, you're up next, Bubba.
I'm not.
No pressure.
I don't know, but I honestly feel like that's a lot of what's.
She said that. He said he was gonna serve another, didn't he?
That's what I heard.
Um,
It's gonna become a trend set.
But I honestly feel like you spend so long getting your feet under you. It's hard to have a new person doing that every single year.
Oh, no question.
And a new finance committee and select board member and a totally new slate of people. And it's kind of a shame, but it is what, we're in the situation we're in, and yeah, it's something to think about.
Yeah.
Is there any other unanticipated business, anything? I think on that, off that topic, but on it, we have a joint meeting coming up with the finance committee on the 14th at 6 p.m. Assuming we're all on board for that.
The 14th at 6 p.m.
Is that Tuesday?
Yeah.
If you have anything that is pressing, just let me, Melissa, Eileen, or one of us know. But I think it would just be good to touch base. I know the finance committee is gonna have some individual meetings with Melissa, maybe some of their own discussions, but it just would be good to meet. Maybe we'll take up the financial reserve policy. Other than that, I don't have any other unanticipated business. We could get into comments and questions from the public.
Nothing.
And we can get into minutes.
Minutes.
You'll be home in warm and snug soon enough. We're doing the 10th first, I'm assuming.
Yeah. In number 2, I do see something about 4 or 5 lines down from that first paragraph in number 2 is unable to or generally does not. It's pretty similar. Can we just go with generally does not?
Yeah, that's fine. Sorry, I was trying to track what you were suggesting with the
Yeah.
answer, but just pick one, which I like. Generally is not better.
I also see in the following
Third
paragraph.
one, Jim asked.
Yeah, Jim asked
Said that
David.
the highway department could, yep, that works.
Jim asked David.
So, are you,
So,
how would the third to last line in that same paragraph read? Jim asked David, I think I was suggesting, Jim suggested keeping the stumps flush with the ground, rather than saying specifically ask David to just.
I think Jim asked David to try and keep the stumps flush with the ground is
Sure.
good. Just because it's not really a suggestion to the extent that we don't want the bank to erode and collapse. And
Yep, no, I got
cars
that
to
part.
fall down, and then we have to spend our stabilization fund to fix the bank. top of the next page, so and thus.
We all were trying to do the same.
And thus the newly approved job description would become effective March 1, 2024, if that works for everyone. And thus the newly approved
Yep,
job
that works.
description would become. And in the following paragraph, I think we can just delete the blue, keep all the orange, just to keep it
Okay,
uniform,
sure.
if that works.
Where are we, we're at 4 now.
Yeah, for 5, the forms will be sent to all department heads for feedback and discussed at a future meeting,
Where are we? The last
and
one.
then just delete there was general agreement.
Yep. By the way, did we ever get, that we kind of finalized this, so we did get feedback from, was there any feedback?
Yeah, Mark and Mickey.
In 6, we just want the correct spelling of Maya, that's all. And then at the very last sentence, the board will also continue to work toward finding an employee or consulting firm, particularly to help with the upcoming personnel reviews for the future town administrator and select board secretary. That got a little jumbled.
Yeah, what's for the future, what the future, maybe
Just delete future.
future, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how that ended up. There, we'll just delete future.
So my orange comment in 11 at this
Yeah.
point, my orange comment doesn't really apply with the other stuff out. The only thing is, it's also unclear, so edits were made by town council, reviewed and approved, there was discussion about where this policy will be kept. It was agreed to have 4 primary places to find town policies, but that doesn't actually say where the draft acceptable use policy would be kept.
Yeah. And I know
Did
stuff
we
has,
come to an agreement?
well, stuff has changed since then. It sounds like we'll put the IT policies right in the employee handbook.
Handbook, right, because there's, yeah, that which I recall that from a previous meeting, but not at this meeting, right?
Not at this.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the sense is that if you get people to sign something and that doesn't pertain to them, it's a problem, and it's a bigger problem if someone doesn't sign something that then ends up pertaining to them.
So I feel like at that meeting,
Is that what you're saying?
at
No, just
that
get people to
meeting,
sign things.
yeah. At that meeting, we had discussed putting it in an IT policies group, that only people who were gonna use computers were
Yeah.
gonna use. But then we
We're
later changed our mind.
Yeah.
Which is fine, we're allowed to do that, the only question is if the meeting minutes are supposed to reflect that, should it say what we said, or should we just leave it out? I'm okay either way, because in the end, we changed it, so it's not relevant.
We can just delete that whole paragraph. We approve the policy.
Okay, that works. Yay, make it shorter, whee!
speaking of like changes versus what actually happened, under unanticipated business, the Friends of the Library thing didn't work out because all of a sudden it wasn't at the library and the library wasn't doing it, and so then they've been pretty strict about, they have to stick to the rules of the nonprofit that wouldn't really follow the purpose of the nonprofit.
So do we need to pull it out of select board?
Yeah, I mean, I had written it up and in some way that kind of made sense, but.
I
What if
mean,
we just delete all that stuff?
sure, we can
Yeah,
delete it, I mean, it says they would potentially be interested, it doesn't say they were gonna commit.
Yeah,
So-
but then it just gets confusing with the,
So just delete from Justin, will reach out to them.
well, no, sorry,
Oh.
delete the other thing about that, and then just keep Justin will reach out to the Friends of the Library because they were potentially interested in sponsoring a childcare, but the location has changed from the library to the firehouse. We'll
Okay,
just leave that in, cause that's
alright,
true,
and just delete the offer to donate the process.
Yeah. cause that got confusing.
By the way, it was cool to have it there, and I got a number of people saying to me that they were grateful that it was there. I don't know if you got any feedback for it, but.
I did, but it was, I felt that it was the right thing to do, and I know Sheffield did childcare, and
Cool.
it was the whole thing was very the whole thing was very interesting, and I do really wanna discuss in the long term about where we go from here. But it appears that group is no longer involved.
I
They're not
suppose after
filled.
the years they've been involved, they may not want to be.
I agree with your comment here. How do you, does anyone know how to spell key fob?
I thought it was FOB.
I don't know,
It's not FAB, that's for sure.
isn't,
Pardon?
how do you
It's
spell
FOB.
sob?
Yeah, I believe it's
S-A-A-B.
S-A-A-B, right?
That's FOB, okay. I would spell it like sob, F-A-A-B.
Oh, but that's because it's not an English name, Saab,
Yeah,
right? They're Northern European.
yes.
Are you okay with my 2 comments for 13?
First one, to get clarification on how the IMA is to be terminated, we're still waiting on that, did Mark ever get back to you, Mark Bransky?
He was trying to schedule a meeting for that with town administrator.
Well, I mean, what kind of a meeting, isn't it, like, it's just gonna be dissolved?
He was trying to get all of us together to talk about it. I don't know why he was thinking.
Yeah. I guess I didn't have any changes as drafted, but, Justin asked if we need to finalize the renewal ban for the borrowing notes. I think the only change would be that, is it the bank, the treasurer who does the MPL?
It was the bank.
But Sarah can change the NPL, right?
I don't know, she made it sound like she had to give the information to David and he had to redo it. That he had the incorrect information.
I don't know, that's, I'm not intimately familiar, but it seems like it'd be a treasurer duty. But what does David get, like a fee when he helps us or something? Yeah, it is a good question. Do we pay David
I don't
anything?
think so.
So what is he, why is he
He's
involved?
in the municipal banking, sector of Unibank. It's just like
He gets paid by someone.
Unibank.
Unibank.
For
Yeah,
what?
but- and how are we paying Unibank?
Does he get a
It'd be like a
fee?
loan officer, you know?
Yeah, it's like,
Well, who
like a
pays
lump-
But we don't pay him?
Yeah, that interest pays them.
Right.
That's what pays them. That's how it's worked. Those guys get fees, they arrange, they
Yeah.
do the paperwork.
So we do pay him.
Yeah, you do pay them an interest.
Indirect.
But not direct.
Yeah,
But-
it's an interest, it's not a fee,
But
it's
I'm
not-
a little confused, cause didn't our loan go to Greenfield Cooperative?
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
I drove-
Unibank
was
doesn't
it great?
carry the loan.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, but they're all in
He's-
cahoots.
Right. I don't think Unibank actually bids on it. Unibank is kind of like our project
Broker,
manager.
or like
Broker,
a
yes.
broker, like, okay, we'll go find you the lowest
Right.
interest.
So
That's
So
not,
maybe the
Right,
bank,
they
that's
make
not,
it from-
that's not
the
unusual.
bank that gets it, gives them a kickback or something, I guess.
No, there's a fee, it's like
Yeah.
when my son bought a house in the spring, he
Huge
went
fee.
to a broker, and this guy goes, if you sign by 12, it's the lowest I can get you.
Do you know, the funny thing is I drove by, did we get it through Greenfield Cooperative Bank? I drove by Greenfield Cooperative Bank this weekend.
Mhm. Did it look like a
They had,
shack
they
or
had,
something?
they had new marble, posts.
Paid for by your interest.
Well, look at that one they're doing in Lee with Raylock.
Well, that's not it, anyway. Alright,
So,
You paid for it.
are you taking my correction or not?
yes,
Okay.
with the correction of the bank, we'll put together
Wait, the bank, sorry, correct.
final.
Okay, so I move that we approve the select board minutes from October 10th, 2023 as amended.
Second,
Second, yes.
Yes,
and yes, so that's a unanimous approval of those.
ooh, and now we have two sets. Going back the other way. Oh my
We
God,
are-
all four of us, this is impressive.
We are approaching the 2-hour mark. I don't,
Do we wanna try and just get through these so they're done?
the other thing would
We
be
can
to,
do the 10/17s and skip the 10/24s.
I
Well,
didn't
we
even
don't-
print you 10.
You did 24 something.
Because you and I still, you didn't give me your changes and I had some changes too.
Yeah.
I think you might have covered them all.
the only thing with 10/17 is if one person, like Susan,
What?
want to take it on, because it just seems like there's
Oh my
different stuff
goodness.
throughout.
Gotcha.
I second the motion that Susan takes it on.
So I'm taking on trying to get it to a state where we're all happy
Where
with
it's
it.
all one,
Right.
So I'll
face
send,
type is all the same
I'll
color.
send it to you with all the changes so you can see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
Thank
we're
you,
not
Susan.
running up against legal deadline. Thank you very much, Susan, for volunteering.
I was happy to be volunteered and I get it.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
A motion that we adjourn.
Second,
Okay, we'll vote.
yes.
And yes, that's unanimous. Meeting adjourned at 7:55 PM.